We're not in a theater, so it's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fun fact, everyone, we don't record this in a theater. No, if we were in a theater, I would be referring to it as the Scottish play.
Okay.
I don't wish to be cursed.
I just wanted to make sure that, you weren't inviting curses.
No.
By accident.
I know better.
Hello and welcome to Steam Powered Movies. This is your host, Mike, and I'm here with...
Hello, I am Dana Fraedrich. I am a steampunk and fantasy author. I am also wife to this guy. So, yeah.
This is our podcast. It's called Steam Powered Movies. We watch steampunk films and then we talk about them. We'll give some initial thoughts, talk some general discussion, give some of our favorite, maybe least favorite things about it. And then at the end of the episode, we will give each movie our special ratings. So stick around for that.
Think of us like your friendly movie pub chat. You get out of the movie, you go for a couple drinks, and you discuss it like one does.
Yeah, that's what we did. We had a couple drinks, we watched a movie, and now we're talking about it.
We did indeed.
And tonight, what we watched was the Netflix film, The Pale Blue Eye. It's fairly recent, just came out the end of 2022. We're recording this in February of 23, so it's pretty new. Stars Christian Bale and Harry Melling, directed by Scott Cooper. And this is maybe a little different than some of the other films that we've covered.
We have.
One, because it's new. So spoiler alert,
Yeah,
we're going to talk about the plot.
If you haven't seen this film and you don't want it to get spoiled, put us on pause, go watch the film, and then come back, because we're going to talk about the ending, I'm sure.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about all the details in this. So you have been warned.
You have been warned. Also a little bit different in that this movie, I don't think is very steampunk. We usually define steampunk as Victorian era with steam-powered technology, maybe sort of futuristic. I didn't really catch any of that in this film, but I have a feeling that you, as the steampunk expert, are going to tell me that there's some sort of carve-out exception for things Edgar Allen Poe related. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Please enlighten us.
Basically, yeah. I mean, Poe is very much sort of gathered up with, the kind of steampunk-esque accoutrement, so to speak. He's almost in kind of the right era. And in fact, some of his stories were published during Queen Victoria's reign. This movie, however, is set in 1830, which is 7 years before Queen Vicky ascended the throne. So we're not actually in the Victorian era yet. But like I said, Poe is just sort of, included in sort of the typical steampunk culture.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the reasons that we wanted to watch this, me specifically, because it was my turn to choose, I am going to be attending on April 1st and 2nd of this year, 2023, the year of our Lord Kitten. I will be in Baltimore, technically Hunt Valley, but it's Baltimore, for the Telltale Steampunk Festival.
Oh, cool.
Which is very, very Poe themed, as you might have figured from Telltale Festival, Telltale Heart, it all goes together. So I specifically wanted to watch this very Poe-ish film. Poe is actually a character in it.
Yeah, he is. He's one of the main characters.
Yeah, exactly. To kind of tie all of those things together, I wanted to watch this film and talk about it. It is the first year of the festival, so I am also trying to promote it and help the organizers to let people know about it. So FYI, Google Telltale Steampunk Festival, Baltimore, Maryland, April 2023. It's not hard to find. You can also go to my website, which is Words by Dana, and the festival event is there too. So,
and if our editor is feeling up to it, they might even put a link in the description of this podcast.
What?
So I'll make a note to the editor.
The editor's doing a great job.
Dear self, put a note in the description. So look down there for that. And it's also a new film, so maybe people are watching it and talking about it anyway. So
right,
let's join the discussion. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about The Pale Blue Eye. One of the things that we started doing, if it's a film that neither of us has seen before, is put some sort of predictions or expectations going into a film, what you think is going to be involved in it. I don't think either one of us even watched the trailer. Is that right?
No, I think, I don't know if you're with me, but when we do these sort of things, i.e. the podcast, I want to go in cold.
Right.
I don't want to like have any expectations or anything like that. I don't feel that way about other films, just podcast films.
I like to watch films like that in general. I would rather know less than more. I mean, you have to watch trailers sometimes to have an idea if you think it's going to be something you will like. If I can avoid a trailer, I will. I'll just watch a movie and be completely surprised. So with this film, I didn't watch anything. I didn't know anything about it. You didn't either. What did you write down as far as your expectations / predictions?
First of all, like we just sort of talked about, I didn't really think it was going to be all that steampunk as far as like gadgetry.
Sure.
I just didn't. It could, from the extremely tiny bit that I saw, you know how like Netflix automatically plays previews or whatever?
It starts the preview a little bit, yeah.
I did not really get that vibe that there were going to be like steampunk gadgets. So I was like, is this even really going to like be steampunky in that like traditional gadget sense?
Right.
I was correct. It's not really. Just basically the time period is almost there. I also expected to get Poe being snarky. Not so much Poe being snarky, Poe just being very mysterious.
He was very dramatic.
Oh, he was. I kind of love it. We can talk about that in a couple of minutes.
We will talk about it.
Okay. And then, you know, gore and suspense, because that's often what you get with Poe. A lot of gore, or at least not like graphic gore, not like, you know, horror porn or whatever, but
something happens that's grisly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And again, the suspense. Obviously, for those who know of Poe's works, The Pale Blue Eye is a reference to The Telltale Heart, where the narrator talks about the old man who he ends up murdering. Spoiler alert for Telltale Heart, in case you've never read that either, which, you know, if you've been in like public high school, you probably did. But anyway, Pale Blue Eye refers to the old man's eye, and he talks about like how it stared at him when he like snuck into the old man's room before he murdered him and whatnot.
Okay. I was wondering which Poe poem that was referencing. I figured it was one of them. It only made...
It's a story. It's not a poem, but yeah.
Yeah, there was a passing reference.
There were a lot of references in this.
Well, they said the pale blue eye, or the character of Poe did, in reciting a poem.
Which that poem is completely fictitious.
Okay.
I looked it up. I'm just going to go ahead and get that just out of the way now. I looked up to see if that was actually one of his poems. It is not. It was made up for the movie.
Yeah, we're probably going to have a bunch of questions for you because you know a lot about Poe.
I am Poe trash.
One of your favorites.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'll be asking you questions about, was this a reference to something? Is this something made up? That was one of the first things I was curious about. And there's a character named Lenore mentioned in that same poem. That's taken from something else that Poe wrote, right? Or something real that Poe wrote?
Oh, well, Lenore is mentioned in The Raven.
Okay.
Talking about his lost Lenore, nevermore, da da da.
Yes.
Yeah. I think he also might have another poem that uses the name Lenore, but I can't remember which one it is.
As far as Poe references, we also had a raven in the movie.
Oh, in the scene where we like discover a sacrificial circle of some kind, immediately following that creepiness is a full-on raven.
Yep. No surprise. Yeah, it dove really deep into the Poe aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't get much of a steampunk aesthetic. We got a lot of Poe aesthetic.
Oh, there's so much like gothic imagery in this. And I love the gothic genre, and this falls very neatly into all of the tropes of that genre.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna try not to get too nerdy. I make no guarantees, however.
Well, I won't hold it against you.
Cheers. Even like the architecture, they were not at West Point, however. The movie takes place at West Point predominantly. It was not filmed at West Point. It was filmed at a different college in Pennsylvania, which names escapes me at the moment. But
well, West Point is an actual school that's been modernized and everything. It has,
yeah,
you know, it has grown since the time that the film is set in. I didn't think it was actually filmed at the real West Point.
I'm just informing the peoples. But yeah, the architecture is very gothic. Like a lot of the, shall we say, tableaus are very gothic, with like, where you have these like bare trees and everything is very gray.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is very dramatic and heavy, kind of poorly lit. There's a lot of suspense and whatnot. Like when Poe is walking down the road in the dark and he's like looking around, he's pretty sure someone is like following him.
Right.
That is a very like atmospheric, gothic-y kind of scene. So all of that is perfect. Really, this podcast is going to focus probably more on like gothic than steampunk, and I'm totally fine with it. It makes the tiny goth person who lives in my heart happy.
It's steampunk adjacent, so
exactly.
we're diving into it. Yeah, it's set in New York in 1830. Yeah, the technology level we're dealing with is horse and buggy and candles. There's no electricity. There's no steam powered anything. Although the production company logo in the very beginning has a train in it.
Oh, did it?
Yep.
Oh, nice.
So we got one steam engine.
There we go. Tying it all in.
It qualifies.
Yeah.
So my expectation / prediction, I basically wrote a prediction for what I thought the story was going to be.
Okay, go on.
Here's what I wrote. Poe, ? Is a detective who solves a mystery, supernatural in nature, but in the end, nobody believes in the supernatural part. So that was my guess, is that he was the detective, he was the main detective character, and that there's something creepy and supernatural going on. He solves the mystery, but the people around don't really get that it's supernatural. That was my guess. I didn't really hit on that part.
You
but I hit on a few
far
things
off though.
Yeah,
you're pretty close actually.
I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah, like minus a few details. You're pretty spot on.
Like, I knew that Christian Bale was playing the main character. I didn't know who he was playing. I thought he might be Poe in the film. He was not. He
does not look like Poe.
Well, you would know.
Yeah, I would. Thank you for stating the obvious.
No, he's playing the detective. I forget his name. They said it a few times. I forgot it already. Landon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember it because I kept wanting to call him Lando, as in Lando Calrissian. But I'm like, nope, it's not Lando Calrissian. It's Landon.
I would have remembered that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Harry Melling, the same actor who played Dudley Dursley in Harry Potter.
Amongst a number of other movies and things. He's actually done a lot since kind of breaking away from Harry Potter and stuff.
He's done a handful of Netflix things. He was in The Old Guard. He was in The Queen's Gambit. Those are the only things that I recognize him from.
I believe he was also in the Apple Plus original of Macbeth with Denzel Washington.
Okay. Yeah, that's possible.
Which, by the way, y'all, if you have not seen it, it is spectacular. Macbeth is not my favorite Shakespeare play. It's in black and white, and black and white is not usually my favorite media type, but it is... Everything about it is amazing.
Don't you mean to say the Scottish play?
We're not in a theater, so it's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fun fact, everyone, we don't record this in a theater. No, if we were in a theater, I would be referring to it as the Scottish play.
Okay.
I don't wish to be cursed.
I just wanted to make sure that, you weren't inviting curses.
No.
By accident.
I know better.
Well, that's good. So that was my prediction. So Poe wasn't the main detective, but he did play detective. And in the end, spoiler, he solved the root of the mystery, and that the real perpetrator was the detective himself.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, no, this entire movie just got spoiled for you. Apologies if you did not heed our earlier warnings.
Which I did not see that twist coming.
I didn't either, but I like it. I like it a lot.
I liked it too, and I respected it because it really sold me on that the film was wrapping up. We solved the mystery. That's what it was. I was even making notes about how earlier Christian Bale's character, the detective, was interrogating someone and was interrogating someone who saw the murderer around the first murder where the guy was hanged. There was a witness who saw something but didn't see very clearly. And he said some line that was like, well, it couldn't have been a woman. And the person was like, well, no woman that I know. And then at the end, we find out that this whole family of the doctor and his wife and his son and his daughter were all in on this ritual sacrifice thing. And I thought at that point, at the end of the movie, that it was like the daughter herself that had lured the guy out there and killed him, or maybe it was the mother. So it really was a woman, and that was a misdirect earlier. And then it pays off that it actually was a woman. But no, even that was a misdirect. It turned out it was the detective.
I made a special note of that because as soon as he was like, not a woman, I was like, well, that sounds like a setup.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah. And this happens a lot in mystery stories, especially older mystery stories, because there is a mix of older stories, especially because of traditional gender roles and blah, 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 of like, oh, women can't do this sort of thing. Like if somebody is murdered in some kind of hand-to-hand way, it's too brutal for a woman. There's talk in some of Agatha Christie's books about how poison is a woman's murder weapon because it's far more distant.
Right.
And there's also just the physicality of, could someone of smaller stature, generally female, or at least assigned to female at birth, could they tussle with someone in order to subdue them and then murder them?
Right. Physically subdue someone. Yeah.
And so that immediately made me think like, we're going to subvert expectations and it is going to be a woman, which it was, but it wasn't. And
Right.
da.
It
So
was really
that was very well done.
Yeah. Like I said, it fooled me. And I made my note at the end like, oh, it turned out it was a woman after all. And then it wasn't.
Right.
So
Couple of fun
got
facts.
me. Yeah.
This is actually based on a book
Okay.
of the same title by, I wrote down the author. Let me just find it here. Louis Bayard, or maybe Louis Bayard. I can never know if it's Louis or Louis.
Louis Bayard.
Came out in 2003.
That was my terrible French pronunciation.
Oh, was it? Oh, sorry. I just glided right over that. I was like, okay, cool.
Well, the movie got me in the mood for doing like a weird and ambiguous accent, so I just kind of went with it.
The accents in here were very interesting. I give it a pass though, because this is still early enough in America's history where I feel like accents are still sorting themselves out. And there's...
I always kind of wonder with these particular period pieces if the actors are doing that on purpose or if they're actually going for something or if they're just kind of fumbling around. It's like when the movie first started, Christian Bale was talking and I was like, oh, he's doing his American accent. And then in a couple sentences, I was like, wait, that sounds like his native Irish accent. And then later on, it came and went and I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
I actually think, what's his name? Harry Melling? Is that his name?
Yeah.
I think Harry Melling's accent was really good. I'm not 100% sure what exact region he was going for. It was some kind of mid-Atlantic, but close to Southern thing, which I actually prefer because I find when a lot of British actors try to do American accents, it kind of sounds like bad Chicago.
Yes, it usually does.
So I prefer this, definitely, because it does sound like it's from a distinct place. And I would rather have that and not know exactly where that place is, because I don't know if that's a Baltimore accent or not. Because Poe grew up in Baltimore. Fun fact.
Okay.
He spent some time in Virginia as well. He actually attended the University of Virginia for a little while, though I think that was after he got kicked out of West Point. Okay.
So Poe did actually go to West Point.
Yeah, he attended West Point. He actually started attending in 1830, got kicked out, attended the UVA for a while, got kicked out. Poe had some issues with gambling and alcohol and just issues.
And probably authority in general.
Yeah. Oh,
and
he
rules.
definitely has that vibe. He is depicted as a fan of Byron in the film. He probably was a fan of Byron. I don't know specifically, but it wouldn't surprise me because he is very much of that romantic strain of poets of just like, oh, fainting couches and everything metaphysical and go with feelings and just drama.
Yeah, so I'm going to have a hard time telling if I didn't like Harry Melling's performance or if I just don't like the character of Poe. I don't know because him on screen was not my favorite thing about this movie. Spoilers for our least favorite things, but yeah, I didn't really like him in this movie, and I don't know if it was the actor and the performance he was giving, or if I just don't like the whole Poe as a character.
Take heart. Poe was very unpopular at the time of his death. A lot of people didn't like him.
So you're saying I'm basic? Is that it?
I did not say that. I in no way, shape, or form said that. I'm just saying Poe rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
Well,
whether
same
that
here.
was because he was kind of an a-hole or because society in general didn't really jive with his whole thing. Debatable. I do think he was kind of an a-hole, though. That or he just like had no F's to give about people's expectations. One of the two.
Something like that.
It could be a
Something
mix
like
of
that.
both.
Yeah. But so you said he was from Baltimore and spent time in Virginia, because
He grew up in Richmond. His mother died when he was very young. I think he was like 2 or 3. Or maybe that was his dad who died anyway, he was orphaned very early on in life, and was adopted. And he grew up, I think, in Richmond. Like I said, spent some time in Baltimore and whatnot.
So mid-Atlantic, but
exactly
sort of southern.
Like Northern Virginia-ish. I know that Richmond is actually in the center. Don't at me. I grew up in Virginia. I know my geography there at least. But still, like kind of more of a urban upbringing with like not urban, but rather suburban upbringing in Richmond. And his adoptive family was fairly well off.
Yeah. So with the accent, I wrote down in my notes that I think that the actor watched Knives Out and did his Benoit Blanc impression.
No, that is not a Benoit Blanc accent. The Benoit Blanc accent is a thing unto itself.
I don't know. It sounded pretty similar to me. There was a lot of foghorn leghorn in it.
No, I disagree. As far as like the nuances of a Southern accent, that was like way lower. Like he dialed it much, much lower than Benoit Blanc.
Maybe just the general theatrics that he was putting on exaggerated everything for me, and that I put it in that category because it felt to me like his whole persona was over the top. I guess probably kind of on purpose, but it just read to me as all over the top. And yeah, not my
he
favorite.
was very extra. My favorite kind of extra Poe thing, and this is actually like the first time we meet Poe in the film, so it really it fits very well. It makes those same kind of promises we've talked about previously.
Sure.
Where he comes in and he's like, the man you're looking for is a poet. And then he dashes off into the snow, away. He literally says nothing else. He just says like, the man you're looking for is a poet. And then, God.
Which I thought might be either a misdirect or a confession. I couldn't tell. It ended up being sort of a misdirect.
I think he was just being really extra about it.
Yeah, it turns out he was just being weird. But as far as when I was watching it, I was
weird.
like, is he the real killer and he's confessing at the beginning to like play games with the investigator? But I kind of figured out at some point along the way that they weren't going to make Poe the villain at all. He was going to not be the guilty person.
That would be definitely like not subverting expectations. I mean, a lot of women did die around Poe.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
Like I said, his mother died very young. He was married a couple of times, and I think all of his wives died, including he married his cousin who was 13. She died very young. And I believe he was married again, and I think she died too. Like I said, a lot of women died around Poe. It is very sus.
Wow. Yeah.
They do seem to have died from very common things like tuberculosis, which I 100% thought that Leah had in the film. As soon as she started coughing, I'm like, she's got TB and she's going to die.
Oh, when someone starts coughing in a film, they're going to die.
Yeah.
Or they are dying in the process of one of those things.
Right. So
never fails.
Let me ask you this. We are jumping around a lot.
Sure.
There's a lot of really good stuff in this film. Just overall, I'm going to say this was a very enjoyable film to watch. But I'm going to jump to a bit of the end with Leah talking with the dad / were they worshiping Satan? Like they talked about the grandfather who I guess like was a Satanist.
Yeah, I didn't.
Or were they just like using witchcraft, which often is conflated with like using witchcraft, worship Satan, which I think those two can be mutually exclusive.
I didn't catch all of the details of the backstory. I think the mixed and matched accents, some of the mumbly saying of lines, and a few other things combined to lead to me not catching all of the dialogue, I guess, throughout this film. I didn't understand everything they said, but I got the gist that there was this figurehead in the family, the great-grandfather, whatever, who had this book of witchcraft of some kind, and maybe he was a Satan worshiper, but I got the sense that the family was just using the witchcraft to try to heal the daughter, not necessarily that they were followers or acolytes, or that the family lineage was like a bunch of Satan worshipers. You know, the father in current day of the story is a doctor, or at least a coroner, a man of science.
Mm-hmm.
So I that felt genuine in that scene where he was like, I'm just doing what I can do to help my daughter. I was at my wit's end. So that was my interpretation, that there may have been a whole backstory of Satan worshipers or witch hunters and all this stuff. But current day, it's just that they had this book of spells or whatever, and we're trying to use that because it's the only thing they had. Because there was no cure for whatever she had. Some sort of seizures. They showed her having a seizure.
Right. I don't think that TB presents with seizures.
No, I don't think so.
It could just be, generic 19th century wasting disease of some kind, maybe epilepsy or something, or maybe several things, since, they didn't really know what it was.
Yeah, there's no telling, but yeah, some sort of incurable at the time disease. So they resorted to the last resort, which they happened to have the resources on hand for.
Which was witchcraft?
Witchcraft, of course. Yeah.
Which I actually think I kind of interpret it the same way you did. Like, okay, yeah. Granddad was like a Satan worshiper or whatever, but they're not really focusing on like the Satan part of it. Like, they're more just like, we're going to do some witchcraft in order to try and save her life kind of thing, which there was a lot of talk about immortality. And I don't think that that's what she wanted. This is actually something I really like about the film, is that they actually kind of made Leah and Artemis and kind of the whole family pretty sympathetic, because I don't know if you caught it. The conflation of Landon's murder of Fry with the sacrifices of the Marquis family.
Mm-hmm.
The Marquis family specifically said, we don't kill people. We only take from either someone who's already dead or someone who's like a willing victim. Because she straight just asked Poe, hey, will you die for me? And he's like, okay.
I thought he was drugged.
No, I don't think he was drugged. I think he was being ultra romantic and like, totally, I will die for you, because he's a goth boy.
That doesn't make sense.
I fully believe that. I mean, people, get in the comments, tell us what you think.
No.
I think Poe was fully on board because he was so in love with her.
No.
And was like willing to die for her.
No.
He said, I will do anything for you.
He said that, and she was like, you said anything, right? I think that he was drugged somehow, or maybe he was just really drunk. I think he believed when he said he would do anything, but in that scene where he is laying on the table and dude's about to cut his heart out while he's alive, he was not with it. He was like some sort of loopy and out of it. He couldn't even move himself when Christian Bale came in and rescued him.
Well, he'd been like losing a bunch of blood.
I guess. Okay. Oh, okay. So they did keep cutting to an arm that was losing blood. That was him.
Yeah.
Okay. So he consented to a ritual. They cut his wrist and he was basically bleeding out, and that's why he was weak and loopy.
Yeah.
Okay. We figured it out. See, sometimes we talk it out and we figure out what we watched.
I already knew what I watched.
Well, good for you.
I'm going to go ahead and chalk this up, though, to like, I am very well acquainted with the whole goth genre, or gothic genre rather. And this sort of thing is very common. Like, if you read like the Mysteries of Udolpho, there's like an evil monk who's actually like not a man of the cloth and not a man of God. If you read like...
Again, I say, good for you. Insert Christian Bale meme here.
Oh, good for you.
Oh, good for you.
That was a deep cut. That was from like 10 years ago. Well, I appreciate you bringing it back.
I'm glad you tried to do the accent, because I was not going to.
Oh, I will never back down from doing a bad accent. You want to hear my Russian?
No, thank you. Speaking of accents.
You don't know what you're missing.
Well, I guess I don't now. Gillian Anderson.
Oh my gosh. Queen.
She's great. She's in this movie. I was a little confused by her performance as well, because it seemed like she was just reprising her Margaret Thatcher from The Crown. I couldn't tell the difference.
I don't know if she was stuck in that accent. It was a little Margaret Thatchery, but I don't know. I mean, Gillian Anderson can do whatever she likes.
Sure, she can. I'm sure that she made her choice and she was like, I'm going to do this. And she did it great. It just, for me, added to the confusion of this movie of like, where and when are they and what is going on
I
with
was
all these
not
people's
confused
voices.
watching this film.
Well, I was a little distracted by everyone's voices being completely different. So I was confused. And like I said, it distracted me.
I want to say, though, her performance, because she very much seems like a woman on the edge.
Mhm.
She's hanging on by a thread and you can see it, and she does it really well. And I love it.
Yeah. Interesting bit about her character, though, at the very end, they mentioned that. So obviously at the end, the daughter who had the sickness and the brother who was helping her, they died in the fire. And the father, who is the doctor, he got put in jail. He confessed, and they are assumed going to convict him in court or whatever. But the mom, they say, got off completely scot-free because she was, quote unquote, grieving as any mother would do.
Yeah, she's suffered enough. Away
What?
you go.
So interesting double standard there.
That was a little bit.
Which
that
actually,
was a little bit hand wavy. I'm not gonna lie.
well, I think it kind of speaks to the treatment of women at the time, and it should be insulting that it's like, no, you are not like smart and capable enough to have done this willingly, this, evil thing. You must have been hysterical or something. You had the vapors and went a little bit crazy because you're a mother and a woman. That's how I took it anyway.
I mean, you're not incorrect. I think it was Susan B. Anthony who, when she was protesting and demanding her right to vote, and she was like, y'all are going to arrest me like a man would be arrested. Treat me as you would a man, because they were going to like let her go because, oh, you silly female, you're trying to vote.
Right.
And she's like, no, you're going to freaking arrest me. I'm pretty sure that was her. Not 100% sure. Somebody, please correct me if I'm incorrect.
It's gonna be great. All the things we got historically wrong in this podcast.
I will never claim to be a great student of history. My ability to memorize distinct details is not always super good.
And I'm too lazy to pause the podcast and look it up. It's just off the top of the dome, y'all.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Like, this is a pub chat. John Finnemore has that whole skit about how like all pub chats have been ruined by like that app that like automatically corrects your
by the
citations.
internet, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Pub chat's been murdered.
Yep. Well, this one's still going.
So way more Poe Easter eggs in this. We've talked about the Raven. We've talked about the fact that it's like just very, very good at kind of doing so many of those gothic tropey things and whatnot.
Yeah, hit me with some more Poe references.
Okay. Fun fact, Poe popularized the detective story with his Murders in the Rue Morgue.
No way.
Yeah. His character, Detective Delphine, I'm probably mispronouncing that. I think he was in 3 different stories, and those were all detective stories. So I'm not saying he invented it. He's often referred to as like the father of the detective story. He popularized it. He also kind of made ciphers a thing. So in his story, The Gold Bug, which is actually what my short story for the festival we mentioned earlier, the Telltale Festival, is based on.
Okay.
So the
cool.
Gold Bug uses ciphers as far as like figuring out an encoded message, which we also had in this film. We had ciphers that needed to be figured out.
Yeah, it was very brief. I actually kind of wish they'd spent more time on that. It was the diary of the first kid, Fry, who was murdered, that the detective got a hold of his diary. And there was like one scene of him pulling the pages apart and soaking them in water or something.
It was some kind of solution because he was like pouring from a bottle.
Yeah. And they didn't explain it at all. And it was, like I said, pretty brief scene. I kind of want to know more about that, the cipher and whatever the process was.
It
I want some
reminded
sciencey stuff.
It reminded me of National Treasure, where, like they get the Declaration of Independence and then he like puts like lemon juice on it or whatever.
Invisible ink.
Yeah. And then he's got to expose it to heat of some kind.
Gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
I was really hoping you were going to do that. You did not disappoint. Thank you. But yeah, so they have to expose it to heat. And then John Voight is like, I'm going to put it in the oven for some reason.
Right.
So it reminded me very strongly of that sort of thing.
Well, I wanted more of it. I wanted more of that process.
Yeah.
And less mumbly talk about West Point or something.
Christian Bale has his very distinct way of delivering dialogue. And it's either, where are the drugs? Or it's, I'm talking about West Point and I think that the murderer might be somebody and I have to figure out the mystery.
Yeah, which I don't mind. I really don't mind it. It was just a little hard to catch some of the stuff.
I feel like when Christian Bale does sort of a depressive character, this is his go-to. Also, I want to point out, so the thing about a detective story that I love doing, you know this.
Okay.
I love trying to figure out who done it.
Of course.
Although at the beginning of this, I wasn't sure if this was the sort of story that the audience was meant to be able to figure out. As you know, because I came down here and railed at you about it, I recently got burned on this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
reading,
you're telling me.
One of Agatha Christie's books. And it's, by the way, I want to say, it's fine. I sort of need to know up front. Because if I expend a bunch of energy trying to figure something out, only for it to be like, oh, you never would have been able to figure it out anyway, that annoys me.
Yeah.
It really annoys me.
Yeah,
so
it can be.
I went in a little tentatively, like, I don't know if they're going to like do that thing. And I think in this, maybe someone who was like really paying attention and making a few leaps in logic and also making the right decisions as to like, who do I trust? Because of course we have numerous narrators in this, including Leah and her family.
Right.
Do I trust them? Because again, they did say like they didn't kill anyone. They only took from people already dead and blah, 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 blah. Do you believe that? So I think if someone were to be like, yes, I'm going to choose to believe that, they maybe could have reached the actual true conclusion of the film, but it would have been very difficult. I thought Patsy might be a mole. Because
who was Patsy again?
Patsy was the server from the pub.
Right,
that
right.
he had a relationship with.
I had such a hard time following this film. And that at first when I saw her in bed with Christian Bale at his place, I wrote down, is she real? Because there's a one.
That's fair. Because there is that other scene. I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, because I didn't catch her at the pub the first time. I only clocked it near the end that, oh yeah, she's an actual character in the town. She was hanging out in the pub. They had a scene of Christian Bale hallucinating seeing his daughter again, and he gets out of bed. And then I'm like, wait, so he was hallucinating that. Was he also hallucinating having someone at home to talk to? Was that his dead wife that he's talking to? That's what I thought it might have been.
Right.
And his daughter and his wife, he's hallucinating the whole thing. He drinks a lot. He's going crazy, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't tell.
Which, by the way, they said very specifically, no drinking while you're on the case. And they just ignored that. And it never came up again. As soon as they said that, I'm like, well, that's going to be a thing. He and Poe are going to get along great.
Yeah, I think that was just to set up that he had a reputation as a drinker.
Right.
And then they show him drinking throughout the whole rest of the film.
Yeah.
He
and like I
ignores
said,
that
it never
directive.
comes up.
Yeah.
But no, I thought Patsy either might be a mole, but turns out I think she was just a character that is often used in detective stories of like the detective has to kind of sort through some stuff. Something needs to be said by the detective in a way to the audience, either without breaking the fourth wall or in a way that makes sense. So him talking to her is kind of the vehicle for him to be able to
without
do
doing
that.
narration, like you said, or speaking to camera or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, as far as you were saying about leaving enough clues to figure it out, they at least peppered in some details that you can go back and connect the dots really well. It's not like ham-fisted.
Right.
It all does go together. even the whole part about him going back to thinking about his daughter throughout the film, that keeps reminding you about his daughter, whether it's characters asking him about it or the hallucinating scene, there's a constant reminder there's this thing in his background. So if you're thinking, wait, why are they hammering on this? There's got to be some sort of connection. You could maybe think that this current story ties to his past.
Oh, I definitely thought that. I was like, but I couldn't see where it was connected, of course, until the end.
Right. Near the beginning, when he interrogates or just questions the roommate of the first victim, and the roommate says, oh, he fell in with a bad crowd. And that's referenced later when they show the three guys attacking his daughter. You know, there's some sort of flashback to that dialogue. It's a bad crowd. The second victim, who was in that crew, he was hanging out with the doctor's family, and you could tell he was like hot for the daughter. And in kind of a creepy way too. They did portray him as a bit leering.
Oh, they definitely
extra.
did. There was a lot of weirdness going on, like with the family as well. And I thought there was something untoward happening with the family. Like Leah was very clearly unhappy and whatnot, which you then learn later. It's because like she's basically living on borrowed time. And like the whole family is kind of in sort of pre-grief for her.
Yeah. Oh, and I wrote in my notes early on, doctor's son equals sketchy.
Oh, he's definitely sketchy.
Yeah, he was real sketchy.
Yeah.
Another thing they dropped was a quote early on, and I wrote it down because I thought it might come back to be important, when Christian Bale inspects the first body. And one, good on him for he's investigating his own crime, pointing out the details that they missed.
I wrote that down too. I was like, why would he have outed himself?
Well, he's trying to build his credibility so when he comes to a conclusion, they will believe him.
Yeah.
Right? So he's finding these details that they missed, and maybe he could tell that somebody else had something to hide too, because obviously he didn't do the part where ripping the heart out.
Right.
So he probably figured out he could solve that mystery, and that would cover up his crime.
Right.
But he said a line after he found those details, the bruise on the back of the neck and the note in the hand, and he said, anyone could have missed that, doctor. And looked at him, and the doctor gave a look back like, I'm kind of hiding. I guess it was more he was hiding something.
Right.
He was, in the moment you think, oh, he's just embarrassed. But that's another little clue that, okay, he didn't just miss something. He wasn't looking close enough on purpose.
That's a point I want to bring up later. But to give Artemis credit where credit is due, he was being sketchy because he was being defensive of his sister.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I'm not trying to lump him in with the rapist crowd.
Right. No. They were real bad.
Yeah.
But he was not of that crowd. No, he was definitely a more sympathetic character at the end than most of the rest of anyone, really.
You find out that like all of his weird behavior, and in fact, the whole family's weird behavior is because they're all trying to like rally around Leah and like protect her because she's dying of just disease that no one can figure out or cure or whatever. And thus I actually really like it. I like the twist there. I like the way that this ended.
Yeah.
I think generally speaking, it's a very good detective story. It's really, really tight. It's really well written. So yeah, I just honestly, there's only one thing that I don't like, which do we want to move on to things we don't like?
Sure. I mean, you're saying things that we like. That was my favorite thing as well, is just the detective story, the twist ending that I didn't see coming at all, even though there was a little bit of clues here and there. It was really well done. I like that. I also, I'll do my little comedy quote corner.
Go on.
There was two things that we haven't mentioned yet. Near at the end, when they were talking about Poe recovering from being almost bled out during the ceremony, someone says, "Oh, he only lost as much as a doctor would remove in a normal bleeding." A normal bleeding.
I mean, it was an oft-used strategy back then.
Oh, I know.
To relieve pressure.
It's just funny now because we know how really, really wrong that was. And then the other thing was Christian Bale saying to Poe, I don't get around poetry. And then Poe saying, why would you? You're an American.
Yeah, that was a funny little thing. And then, of course, Landon asks him, well, then what are you? And he's like, what did he say?
He said, I'm an artist.
I'm an artist. Oh my gosh. Bruh. Like, I was in no way, shape, or form surprised by that response, but also I was just like, oh gosh. Yeah, no, this is good. You're very Poe-y. You're Poeing it up.
It also even made me question, not to keep going back to the accents, it made me question, where is he from again? I thought he was from America.
That was not really one of my hangups. So I do want to say, okay, when it comes to like steampunk fashion, loved Leah's dresses, loved Gillian Anderson's dresses.
Yeah.
Just love. They're fabulous.
Fancy
even like
and
the
frills
details
and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, like the sleeves where she had kind of like these like huge like bow sleeves. That was amazing. But so I don't really know much about military uniforms of that era, but I feel fairly well convinced that the giant hat had to have been used for a reason. And I feel that is probably actually what they wore. The hat was absurd. And
it has to be real.
It.
Why would you do that
I know.
on purpose if it wasn't a real historically accurate thing?
Right. No, I'm fully convinced of it. But like they are all wearing them, which I'm sure is also like the thing that you do. Like if you're not indoors, like as far as like in someone's house visiting or whatever, you wear your hat. And they're just so dumb. Like I was just staring at it. Like I'm having a really hard time taking you seriously in that hat because it's huge.
Yeah, the hats were pretty dumb. And the Poe character looked really awkward in the uniform. I'm sure that was on purpose too, that they wanted him to look awkward because he's a misfit there. He doesn't fit in. It's not his scene.
That was good casting as well. I don't know how often you've seen a picture or like a portrait of Poe. He has very unique kind of facial construction. His is a very recognizable face.
Yeah.
And not just because like he's one of the world's most famous poets. Like just the shape of his face and his features are very distinct.
Yeah.
And so I think that was really good casting of Harry Melling.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of things that we like about this movie. Tell me something that was not your favorite.
Okay. So, and this is more just sort of a Dana bugbear.
Okay.
There is this trope. You usually see it in like pulpy detective stories and stuff where like everyone but the main character, the detective, is kind of incompetent at their job. I don't like this trope. It's so self-aggrandizing.
I had that thought in the beginning. There's always the old guys in charge of stuff who never want to do things the right way for some reason. In the very beginning, when they're like, we have our man, don't we? And Christian Bale is like, we're not sure. I don't know. And they're just like, well, can't we just arrest him and yada yada? And I'm like, dude, would you rather just arrest somebody and not know if they're the right person or not? Don't you want to find out if it's real?
Right.
Who actually did it?
They just want results. But no, I don't like this trope. Like I said, I know it's like a common thing. And I guess there's not necessarily anything wrong with it. It's just a Dana thing. Like
Fair enough.
Just don't like it. It always comes off to me as just like so conceited, which don't get me wrong. Like I think there's a lot of problems with law enforcement and the way they do things and whatnot.
Sure.
I'm not trying to like stand for law enforcement and all of the problems therein. But I just don't like this because you see it a lot. I'm just like, oh gosh, like not everyone is incompetent at their job.
Right.
Except for this one special person.
Well, it makes for more interesting stories.
No, it doesn't. I don't like it.
Well, it creates conflict for the hero to overcome.
I think it's more interesting when it's not an issue of just blind incompetence and more just either an agenda issue. I love clashing character agendas.
Right.
You see it a lot with like 80s cop films where like, the captain of the police force is like, you're off the rails. Give me your badge and your gun.
Classic,
I've got the mayor on the phone and he's breathing down my neck to get results. Like, that's fun.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
I think they tried to do that here, but in a much more subdued way. He
No.
was like, the president is on me. I need to resolve this case. I think there was some insinuation that the academy itself was under fire to some degree. Near the beginning, there was some line of dialogue that made me actually look up when West Point was founded.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually in 1806 or 1807.
So it hadn't been around for super long.
Right. And this was 1830. So
Mhm.
I was thinking that it was maybe one of those things where the academy was sort of new and still proving its worth
Uh-huh.
to the country.
Mm-hmm.
And that this incident could put them in danger of maybe losing funding or something like that. They didn't really spell that out, but that was the vibe that I got, was that at least the reputation of the institution was under fire from Washington. Christian Bale even says at the end, like, those stooges in Washington.
Oh, right. You know what? I see what you mean, and I think I missed it because
Yeah.
that has all the reservation of like British, for lack of a better word, reserve.
Yeah.
Like none of this like big American boisterousness, just like, oh, well, you see the people in authority there asking questions, and then we move right along.
Right. No, it wasn't big and brash like an 80s film. This was very much, period English, prim and proper, even though it's set in America. They're all colonists and whatever anyway. Yeah. I think that was the thing they were going for.
We weren't colonists anymore. By 1830, we had declared independence.
Well, the sons of colonists, whatever. Close enough.
It's been maybe a generation or two,
Yeah.
depending on how you look at it.
So my least favorite things, I already talked about the accents.
Yeah.
Distracting.
Sure.
Confusing.
Uh-huh.
The other thing I'm going to say might be sacrilege to you,
Go on.
especially given the context of this.
Okay.
Probably my least favorite thing about the movie was Poe.
Okay. I don't blame you for that. I just need you to know that, like, I feel that was a fairly, like, on point representation of Poe. I understand why you didn't like it, but also that's very much like a your opinion thing.
Okay, well, I will spare critiques for the actor who played him, and I'll reserve my critique for the man they are portraying. That there was one scene in particular when Christian Bale, I'm not going to remember his character's name ever. I'm just going to keep saying Christian Bale. Christian Bale goes back to Poe because he had just found out that Poe had a tiff with both of the guys who had turned up dead so far.
Uh-huh.
So he goes back to question him. Even though he knows that he's the one that did the murdering,
Uh-huh.
he's still questioning Poe.
He's putting on a good act, a good
Right.
performance.
No, he's selling it. And then Poe is like, if I, killed someone for every act of unkindness done towards me, you would have less than a dozen cadets, and my tale of woe, and I am so been picked on since day one. Wow, I'm a sad boy. I don't care. That was my impression of Poe. That's what I got.
Okay.
Did not come across as sympathetic at all. I could tell the scene was trying to make him sympathetic, and for me, it went the opposite. I did not care.
Yeah. And I want to be clear, like, just because I am trash for Poe does not mean that I don't recognize, like, the slew of sketchy stuff in his life and that he perpetrated himself.
Mhm.
I'm not recognizing that, but he is dead and gone.
Yeah.
So I don't need to, I don't personally feel like I need to be mad at him the way that, like, I'm mad at J.K. Rowling for being a TERF and supporting anti-trans organizations and things. So again, I'm not recognizing Poe's issues.
Yeah.
I just, like I said, there's a difference.
Maybe self-inflicted issues. Maybe he had it coming. I don't know. That's going too far.
I don't think so. The alcoholism, like, I'm going to give him a pass for, because alcoholism is a disease.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, on that note,
Mm-hmm.
it's time to rate this film. We give two different kinds of ratings
Uh-huh.
for the films we watch here. The first is, how steampunk is this film? On a scale of 1 to 5 steam engines, Dana, how steampunk is The Pale Blue Eye?
I'm going to say it's not very.
Yeah.
Probably one.
One, yeah.
One steam engine. Like, it's very gothic. I love it. I love the aesthetic. not very steampunky in my opinion.
I agree. Well, we
But
can
hey,
go
if
with
you
the
guys
one.
disagree, add us at Steam Powered Pod and let us know how wrong we are.
Yeah. Give us your feedback. We welcome it. I'm gonna agree with you there. 1 out of 5 steam engines for how steampunk this film is. The second is how much we enjoyed the movie.
Mhm.
So this is, we play amateur film critic, kind of, but we don't know what we're talking about. This is just how much we enjoyed the film. How much did you like this film on a scale of 1 to 5 gears? Dana, give it to me.
Ooh, I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5.
4. Okay, that's strong.
I did really like it. I liked it a lot. I'm not raving about it the way that I raved about Howl's Moving Castle, for
Mhm.
instance, which is fully like 5 out of 5.
Yeah, that was a great one. For me, this film, I'm kind of torn. I really like the detective story.
Uh-huh.
There were obviously some things we've talked about that I didn't like as much
Mm-hmm.
about the setting and characters. I like the story. I'm going to go with 3.5 top hats. I'm going to cop out and give it a half. So my rating's 1 to 5 top hats. I'll do 3.5. I liked it. Good detective story. It's over 2 hours. Didn't feel that long, really. I thought it was...
It moved pretty well.
Yeah, it moved pretty well at a pretty good pace. Solid film.
Absolutely. Yeah, go check it out. It's a good one.
Yeah, so that's what we thought of The Pale Blue Eye. Go watch it if you haven't already. If you want to give us any feedback about anything that you thought or suggest other films that we should cover on this podcast, tweet at us at SteamPoweredPod. If you give us a suggestion that we use, we will give you a shout out on a future episode. So go ahead and do that. You can also go to steampoweredmovies.com for more information. And as always, thanks for listening, and we will hang out with you next time. Looking
Awesome.
forward to it.
Yep. The author you're looking for is this woman. And then I dash off into the night.
Okay, thanks for listening.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Oh, good for you.